Hi, everyone. Welcome to Joseph's Fireside Chat Series. My name is Tom Dreyfus. I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Josef. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by Simon Suttie, the principal lawyer at the Gippsland Community Legal Service. Welcome, Simon.
Thanks, Tom.
It is really great to have you here. For everyone watching, first things first, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at the Gippsland Community Legal Service.
Thanks. So, obviously, as you said, I'm the principal lawyer. So, I have the fun job of overseeing and being responsible for basically all the things that we do at Gippsland Community Legal Service, which can be quite stressful, managing all the legal side and the responsibility that goes along with that. But also lets me do some really fun things, like play with the technology to make all of that stuff work a little bit better for our clients. Not sure what you want to know about me, Tom, but I'm happy to share anything you would like.
Tell me about the GCLS itself. Who do you help? What kinds of issues do you help people with?
Yeah, so we're a generalist community legal centre. So basically that means that we do a lot of weird and wonderful random stuff. At the core of GCLS's work is very much family violence. So we provide a lot of services for family violence intervention order jury lawyers at courts across Gippsland. So we service 5 out of the 6 courts across Gippsland with those duty lawyers, and then we also have a generalist advice service where about half of the matters that come through that are also related to intervention orders or family violence, and then about 30% of those advices are also in relation to things like family law, and then about 10% things like tenancy. But we do also do a lot of random things that you might not necessarily see as much in the city. The neighbourhood disputes and things like that for farmers can be very, very interesting. We also do a lot of disaster preparedness work, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but we also have a statewide rental stress support program running in conjunction with Anglicare Victoria's financial counsellors. And that's one of the bots that we've developed for Josef.
Got it. Before we do get into the technology and how you've used Josef, you just described the work as stressful, which I know is an experience that a lot of the people working in the access to justice organisations that we're proud to support experience. Why do you work in access to justice? I mean, it's hard. Why do you do it?
I think like anybody, and probably very much like yourself with your background, we get into these roles because of that desire to help people, and that's really at the core of what organisations like GCLS do. And we're lucky enough to have developed some really amazing skill sets that we can share with clients. And I think I always try and keep in the back of my mind that if this work is this stressful for me, then imagine just how stressful it is for clients actually navigating that system without the background that we have and the understanding that we have. So it may be stressful for us, but it's stressful in a very different way for them and in a very more real way for them because it is their lives that we're talking about. So that desire to take those skills that law degrees give us and use them for good so that we make people's lives slightly easier in moments that are usually the most challenging that they will have throughout their lives.
I love that way of thinking about it. And I do think that we share that. One of the things that's special about Josef is that our origin story is legal aid, is access to justice. It's where we started, and it is the work that we continue to do that we are most proud of. What was it that made you start thinking about the role of technology in the delivery of those services in your work to make people's lives just that little bit better?
I don't think there's one particular thing. I think technology for me, being from the generation that I was brought up in, is just something that's been part of my life basically for forever. So I remember having phones basically forever. I remember having internet, albeit very slow when I was younger, basically forever anyway. So I think I sort of keep track because I'm interested in that technological side outside of work. And then the natural progression for that is to take all those amazing things that I'm seeing in that space and think about how we could actually use that to take what is a very resource challenged sector and make it more accessible for clients. And that's where all those different technologies come in and where something like Josef, I think, is most useful. So I generally stumble across these things outside of work and then think, wouldn't this be amazing if we could implement something like this at GCLS?
Mm. You mentioned the resourcing challenge. For a lot of the legal aid and access to justice organisations we work with, it is about how to do more with less, how to scale the services that they deliver to meet what feels like and what might actually be unlimited demand with what are certainly limited resources. Is that the kind of calculus that you did when you were thinking, how are we going to know whether this is the right thing to invest in? I mean, there are so many things you could invest in to meet the demand for those services. Is it a resourcing question? How do you think about the decision that you made to go down the technology path?
Yeah, well, one of the things I have to be comfortable with as principal lawyer to do my job really well is that resourcing aspect. So where the reality, unfortunately, is that we're probably never going to have enough resources to provide all the services we would like to everybody in Gippsland. So at some stage in my role, I have to be comfortable with where those bottlenecks are sitting and who's not going to be able to access our services. The issue for us was very much that limited resourcing was creating bottleneck intake, and to a degree still is. And that's something that we're trying to ensure doesn't happen so that at least we're in control of where that bottleneck occurs. So trying to really clarify those processes, make them easy enough for clients to actually go through rather than waiting on a phone for 40 odd minutes just to speak to somebody and then be told that they're not eligible because we're too busy, to actually have that sort of baseline service delivery where even though we might not be able to provide a service, we're at least telling them promptly, we're giving them a guide about where they can go if they can't access our service, and then transferring that bottleneck more to where the lawyers sit giving advice so that we can close that off if we need to, but it's not occurring at that intake stage. So it's still relatively clean for people to come through, but the service decisions are still sitting behind it. So I think for me, I've obviously made peace with the idea that we're never going to have the resources that we need to help everybody. And I've tried to sort of design our systems so that even though that is the reality, it's still as easy to navigate as possible for our clients going through it, and as clear as possible to them.
Mm. You actually said something really interesting that I'm going to come back to just then about how you're centering the client's experience in your service delivery model. I'm going to come back to that point. Tell us a little bit more about what you've actually built with Josef. What is the tool? What is it for? Who does it help? What are the things that you hope it does?
So the first two tools that were built were part of the rental stress program that we have. So we are a service of Anglicare Victoria, which means we can work really closely with Anglicare's other programs like their financial counsellors. So to recognise that we were successful in some funding to provide rental stress services across the state. That's a relatively new problem. That's statewide service provision for GCLS. So to try and overcome, again, that resourcing issue with needing resources at the front end to bring people into that process for GCLS, we've developed two rental stress bots. So one for clients and one for...
Can you give us a very quick definition of rental stress for those who don't know?
Yeah, so rental stress is the general side of things that people probably would recognise, like not being able to actually afford your rent. The definition is usually paying more than 30% of your income on your rent. But it also extends more widely than that in terms of people who can pay their rent but can't afford other things because of the prioritisation of their rent. So it's a fairly broad definition that we've adopted as part of this program. So it's not just people who literally can't afford to pay their rent that we're considering rental stress. It's people who can't afford other things because of that as well.
Got it. And sorry, I interrupted. You were telling us about the tools.
No, that's okay. So those two tools, one is client-centered and one is for professionals looking to refer clients. So taking some really clean intake forms so that those clients can put through inquiries to us on our website really cleanly. And then obviously because of the flexibility of Josef, it means that we can also embed those in things like Agricare's website when we want it to be easier for a client to access our chatbot to put that referral through to legal and in other places as well. So that's the first two that we've released. So those two are very much live on our website now. So if anyone's watching this and needs to put referrals through, jump through to our website.
And if those tools are working perfectly, what's the outcome, both for the user and for you as an organization?
So the outcome is that it takes us fewer resources to actually monitor it, to actually process it. So we're in the process now of actually connecting those bots to our practice management system. So we use ActionStep. So when that connection is done, it will actually mean that a client will go on, or a referral will go on to those bots. Those bots will guide them through the eligibility, will ask those initial intake questions, and then send it straight through to ActionStep, where it pops up on a list for our lawyers, and it doesn't actually have to go through our admin at all. So it goes straight to our lawyers list. Our lawyers work through that list, and it really cuts out that need to speak to an individual person at the intake stage to hold on our phone line to actually get through to them. And it also has the flow-on effect that it means that we can use those admin resources to do other things that aren't just processing that data as it comes through a form.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then coming back to the point you made earlier about the client centricity, I think that one of the things we've learned working with access to justice organizations is that one of the most resource intensive parts of the organization is often dealing with the people you can't help. And you said this up front, which is, I mean, kind of kudos to you. Thinking about the people you can't help might not be in your remit technically, because they're people you can't help. But by centering their experience, you actually lead to a better outcome, not just for them, but for your organization. I'd love you to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few people within the sector who are really across this technology side of things and the scope that it gives us in that space. And I've sort of dreamt for a long time about a world where even the people that we can't help, we're able to point in the right direction with relatively limited resources. So what this sort of project means is that we can, through something as simple as a Josef bot, direct those people to resources that will be able to help them, or to other organisations that will be able to help them with almost no time spent on our behalf aside from the actual construction of the bot. So it's very easy to include in those Josef decision trees, we can't help you, but these people can, which when you're having that conversation over the phone at the intake stage still takes probably 5 or 10 minutes of your time, because there is part of their story that they will share before you even get to that stage where you can't help, and they often continue sharing that story unnecessarily after that. And that's frustrating for them, because they feel like they've given you all of this information, but you're effectively giving them nothing in return. So trying to reduce how much trauma we're actually putting the client through, because a lot of these stories are filled with trauma and very difficult for people to tell. And then we're saying, thank you for telling us, but we can't help you, and go here. And it's just a very, very poor experience for the person on the other side. And these sorts of technologies allow us to make that experience just so much better for them, so much cleaner, so much faster, and so much less traumatic.
Yeah. I mean, it sure sounds like they can And it's a really wonderful way of thinking about how to develop these tools, asking yourselves the question, how are clients currently experiencing this workflow, this process, this interaction with what they hope will be a service provider that helps them with the thing that's probably making their lives pretty hard at the moment. I think that's, for us at Josef, that's the right way of thinking about how to build these tools. What is one thing that you would tell other access to justice organizations who are thinking about the role that technology can play in their service delivery model?
I think in the access to justice space, we're generally behind everybody already. So I would encourage everybody in that space just to try and be really innovative and push the boundaries, because our pushing of the boundaries is usually something that's been done in the private space for years by the time we actually get comfortable doing it. And it often means that the experiences our clients are having probably not as good as they could be, or sometimes we're even so far behind that the expectations that clients have are realistic, and we're just not able to deliver them because we haven't kept up to speed with the implementation of these sorts of things. So I would encourage anybody in the space to certainly try and push the boundaries when they're thinking about these projects, because chances are that somebody somewhere has already done it and has found a way to make it work, and you can leverage off that and implement it relatively easily for our use cases. But I would also say there's just so many people to reach out to in the sector that will be happy to share their time and share their experiences and talk you through what worked for them, what didn't work, so that you're not starting off from scratch and you've got that understanding before you even start to develop something.
Well, I think with that offer, Simon, for everyone to reach out to you for advice and insight into what has and hasn't worked, we might wrap things up for the day. I really appreciate all of the time that you've spent, not just speaking to me, but working with Josef on the tools that you have now launched for your clients. The impact that they're having is pretty extraordinary, and I know this is only the beginning. So congratulations to you and everyone at GCLS on the work you've done so far. And here is to many more successful projects in the future. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.